Schmidt. I'm the new Rockridge superintendent of the new Rockridge Public Schools. So welcome to our second Q&A session. I do realize that there'll be some folks who are will be joining us and coming on. That's okay. So the purpose of tonight is to answer questions that parents may have about any one of a number of things. Could do with COVID, could have to do with the start of the school year. What's going to happen start of the school year, could have to do with athletics, any one of number of things. And the easiest way to do this is to send me via email the questions and send them to noel.schmidt@rrps.org. And then as the questions come in, and this is what I did last time, I will read them out loud, and then we'll kind of have the principal or the admin person answer the question who's in the best position to answer the question. So send them to noel.schmidt@rrps.org. So as we're waiting, there's also a chat button feature. And it's in the bottom middle of my screen. And I assume it's also to yours. So some people will also use that and chat back and forth. And so we'll see how it goes. This will be a smaller group than last time. I think we had upwards of 175, 190 people. So if you have any questions, send them to me. And as of this minute, I have no questions. So let's just kind of hang loose for a little while and let's kind of wait. So send me a question if you've got it, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to just hold off and wait until I get some questions. And during the meantime, there will be no elevator music that will be playing.
Dr. Schmidt, could you do a reminder on transportation? There seems to be some questions that we still keep getting in the office just about what transportation looks like, how the times have changed, and things like that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I will. And also, I think I saw Bob Boss here for a little bit, but Bob Boss, are you online right now?
I am.
Okay, can you just talk in some generalities about transportation and how that is going and important things that the parents should know?
I can.
I know one of them is that some of the buses, a lot of the buses are starting 15 minutes later, especially on the Virginia side of the equation. Is that also happening in Eveleth-Gilbert, the old Eveleth-Gilbert School District?
It is happening in Eveleth-Gilbert School District, yes.
Okay, so all of the buses are starting a little bit later than last year, so parents be on the lookout for that. We have sent out on the Virginia side an updated bus schedule. So if you're going to a Virginia school district and your child is being transported, look for the updated bus schedule. That is different than the one that you might have received in the mail. So Bob Voss, any generalities, things about transportation that the parents should know about? Like, do I have to wear a mask on the bus? Things like that.
Okay, so we're hoping the numbers will be down on the buses. We're going to try to keep the students distance in the bus if that's at all possible. The students will be required to wear masks on the bus unless there is a medical problem where they cannot, or any other problem that they cannot. But please call me if there is going to be a problem with that, so we know ahead of time. I will have masks on the bus for the students. However, I'm going to have them only if you forgot it or broke it or something like that. We really won't be handing out masks every day on the bus. So make sure the kids remember to bring their masks with them. Like Dr. Schmidt said, the buses will run in the district 15 minutes later than usual. And we're going to take good care of the kids. So, I don't want you to worry.
All right, thanks, Bob. And we have a question coming in. And for those of you just joining us, send your questions to my email address. It's in the chat screen button, or it's noelschmidt@rrps.org. Here's a question. What is going on with the masks and the face shields? I'm confused. Is it okay if my child wears a mask or a face shield? Does it make any difference? Principals, we were just talking about this today, not too long ago. Let's start. Sheena, let's start with you. Give it to you over at Parkview. What is the story between masks versus face shields versus kids wearing them?
Yes, Sheena Stefanich here. I'm the Parkview Learning Center principal. We have had a meeting, and according to our guidelines and what our COVID director is telling us, that all staff and students and individuals that enter our school buildings need to be wearing a mask. Face shields are not going to be allowed unless, of course, there's a medical reasoning, like Bob was talking about on the bus. And that's going to be, we'll try a face shield if there's a medical reasoning for not wearing the mask. But masks are going to be required for all staff and students here at the Parkview.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question. Where are kids eating lunch in the high school? I've been in the cafeteria and I don't know how they're all going to fit. So high school lunch is what's happening.
I can take that one. Lisa Perkovich here, principal at Virginia High School, and it depends on their grade level. So there's really 3 places that students could eat lunch. If they are in grade 7 through 12 and they're eating hot lunch from the printed menu or a few salad choices, they would be in the cafeteria. If they're eating cold lunch, they're bringing a bag lunch from home and they're in grade 7 through 12, they would eat that in assigned classrooms. So where they have their 3rd period class is also where they'd have their lunch. If they are a 10th through 12th grader, they still do have the luxury of open lunch, so they could choose to leave campus. So the cafeteria for hot, cold lunch for classrooms, or they can leave campus in 10th through 12th grade.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Here's a question. Lisa, we're going right back to you. When will Virginia High School get their final schedules? And once we get them, how do we make changes if needed? There's a couple questions here. Let's just start with that one, Lisa. When will we get our final schedules and how do we make changes if needed?
They actually should be dropping into your email almost simultaneously. I know that the secretarial staff in the front office is sending those right now. So you should be getting that final draft within the next 10 to 15 minutes. As of right now, there can be absolutely no changes over the weekend due to some COVID restrictions that we have. Our teachers need to know who's going to be in their classrooms on Tuesday. So we can't change anything over the weekend. So what will happen is if they need changes, they need to follow their schedule that's printed, that's given to them as is, until the counselors can get to their schedule changes one by one. And just like on any normal year, it usually takes somewhere between 1 and 5 days to process all of those schedule changes. So they'll stay in those classes until the counselors can get to those.
Okay, and then another question, Lisa, I think this is for you. Was there really a Zoom open house for 8th through 12th grade last night, like today's mailing said?
No, there was a Zoom open house for all 7th graders last night. There was one for 7th grade, and we had parents that joined that. We did not have a Zoom open house for 8th through 12th grade. No, I'm not sure what you're referring to, so I'd have to see what that mailing is and see where it came from. I don't know much about that one.
Okay, And principals, all of the open houses, are they over? Are there any open houses that have not, that are still coming up? I think they're all done or in process. Okay, I see head shaking. Yep. Here's a question. What will happen when a student or parent forgets to submit the daily COVID assessment before school? And let's look. Jeff Carey, are you on? Oh, no, let's give it to, let's see, elementary principal. Dan, you haven't said anything yet. So what happens when a student or parent forgets to submit the daily COVID assessment before school?
We did meet as a COVID team today to talk about this. We know there's going to be a little bit of training involved with our students and our parents to get used to completing this assessment. So what we're going to be doing is just sending out reminders to those parents that when we get that notification, they have not filled that report out. Also reminding students, and depending on the grade level, we're thinking that some of the older students could fill that out themselves, but the younger ones are going to need parent support with that.
Okay, athletic directors, it's your turn. What's happening with sports? Are we having junior high football or not?
Josh,
Go
I can,
ahead. Josh or Jojo?
go ahead, Josh.
No, go ahead, Jojo.
We will be having junior high football. That will be later in the spring. This fall, we will be having 7 through 12 football practice. Josh, what's the start date on that?
That would be a September 14th start date for the fall training sessions.
And they will receive info from each athletic department and or the coaches to prep for that.
Yes, we will be sending out information next week as school starts, and they will be able to sign up next week for their fall training sessions in the athletic office in Virginia.
Okay, athletic directors, here's another question for you. Evelyn Gilbert girls tennis, when can they start playing and practicing again?
They will be back in action the first day of school. So right after school, they have practice at 3 o'clock. So that'll be a few days past the 14-day window. We could have brought them back on Friday, but the coach was not planning on having Friday practice over the Labor Day weekend. So they'll be back in action Tuesday, and hopefully we'll be healthy from there on out. I know there have been a few other schools who have are out of tennis for 14 days as well, and now we're seeing more and more teams soccer pop up as well in the Duluth area. So hopefully we'll remain healthy. Otherwise, if there is another case, we would be out for 14 more days. So hopefully we won't see that.
Okay, could you, we did get another question on that one. Say, Josh, could you elaborate on that about, the question is, what happens if a child athlete who has COVID comes to practice and they have a verified case of COVID? What happens to the rest of the players? Does the whole sport go home and quit, or do we quit? Or is it just those some people who are around the kid? What happens?
Well, we got to send that to the MDH, the infected case, and then we would just do a contact tracing to see who's around it. But most likely it's going to be the people that are in his or her pod that would need to be sent home.
Saying, Josh, could you elaborate, for those who don't know, what is a pod?
A pod is who they are mixed with right now at practice. Every athlete is set into a pod so that we try not to keep intermixing between teammates. We try to keep them in one separate pod. Pods could be the size of 12, like in tennis, or maybe 20 in football, 25 in football, or they vary in sizes, but the max is 25 in a pod.
And then once we hear of that positive case, like Josh said, when we call the MDH and submit the student athlete's name, then the contact tracing means you just need to figure out every single student athlete that has been within 6 feet of that positive case for up to 15 minutes. And for athletics, it's cumulative. So if they were there 2 days in a row and they were positive, what the MDH told me is you add up every time you think they've been within 6 feet. So it gets a little tricky for everyone involved, but that's where the MDH contacts the coaches and we try to do the best we can. And MDH just wants us to play it safe. If we aren't exactly sure, whoever in that pod should be sent home.
And then this is kind of related one here, one more athletic one. There's a tournament in the Twin Cities. Can my child go? I think they mean athletic tournament or dance line, I can't tell.
So according to the COVID document that was sent out from Rockridge School District, if your student is a current student athlete in one of our fall Minnesota State High School League approved sports, they would be unable to go to the cities and then come back and play. However, I should say you shouldn't, but if you do go to play in the cities, then the rule states that you would have to quarantine for 14 days before it's safe to come back to your fall sport. Anyone want to add to that?
I guess if you're not in a fall sport, you're free to go to play in the cities. That'd be about it.
This is a clarification on Lisa's answer, and I know Angie from the Evelyn Gilbert High School will be here joining us shortly. She had a prior meeting. Lisa, what you said about the lunch periods, does that also apply to the Evelyn Gilbert High School, or is that only to Virginia High School?
It is my understanding that that is the same across both campuses. I cannot speak for the 7th and 8th grade in the Gilbert campus. I'm not entirely sure, but at 9-12, I do know that it's either hot lunch in the cafeteria, cold lunch in the classrooms, or open lunch 10-12 as well.
Okay, Todd, are you online? Okay, let's skip that one. Then let's see, got some other questions coming in. Other schools in the area have they're doing some different things. Does that impact us? Let's start with, are we still having school start on September 8th? I can answer that question. Yes, school is starting on September 8th. Is there any difference between Virginia, Evelyn, or Gilbert as far as school starting, as far as when school starts? No. All schools in all 3 of those towns are all starting on September 8th. Each building, however, has different starting times. So principals, do you want to quick say what time the student day starts? And then probably also more importantly, what time can kids come into the building? So when can parents expect that the doors would open so their kids could go in? Because we don't want them being dropped off at 6 in the morning or 6:30 in the morning and have them waiting outside for long periods of time. When did the door open and when does the school day actually start? So principals, let's start in the elementary school with answers.
Okay, at the Parkview Learning Center, the doors open for students to be dropped off at 7:45, and our school day starts at 8:05.
At the Roosevelt, the school building will be open at 7:45. In the past, class has started at 7:55, but between 7:55 and 8 o'clock, classes will be starting. We know it's going to take a little bit of time for those students to get in the building and get to their classrooms. So 7:45, doors open.
At the high school level, Virginia High School and Evelyn Gilbert High School both open their doors at 7:45 a.m. and class begins in both Evelyn Gilbert and Virginia at 8:15 a.m.
Okay, and I'm just kind of looking it up here, and I believe the Gilbert campus, 8:05 is when school is starting there. Let's see, other questions? If there are any changes Will parents be notified? I can answer that one, yes. Oh, here's a really good one. Do you have any advice for us this school year? Because things are so different. So principals, let's do this one at a time. If you had any advice for parents, what would it be? Then we'll go to the athletic directors. Lisa, let's start with you. Start with the high school.
Thanks. I guess my biggest advice for families is just to really model patience and model flexibility. It's going to be a bumpy start. We know that things are in flux constantly. Today we even had our distance learning iPads get picked up, and we had 17 students change in a matter of an hour. And so that changes a lot of things that happen on this campus as far as what courses are available and what courses students can take. So I guess the biggest thing is just to model that and try to have a positive attitude. If you have a positive attitude, your kiddos will have a positive attitude, and we'll all find a little bit more success.
I'm gonna say I'm glad that Lisa got to go first, because I'm just gonna say I would totally agree with her on the flexibility and the positivity. Things are ever changing. Even the COVID restrictions and things that we get from the state are changing constantly. So just continue to model that and be flexible. And also, if there is an issue, don't hesitate to call the office, give us a call, and give your teachers a call, and we'll work with you.
I also agree with all that. We appreciate your patience. I would say for our open house which by appointment, we probably had 90% of the families come in. So it was great to see families and students in the building. You know, that positive energy, kids were excited to be coming back. So we appreciate that. We know that you're talking to your children about some of the changes, the wearing of the mask, the social distancing, all that stuff will help.
All right, let's go to the athletic directors. Jojo, why don't you start us off? What's your
All
best
right.
advice for
Same
parents?
same thing that Sheena, Lisa, and Dan already said. It's the same thing in the extracurriculars. The COVID, for us, the guidelines are always changing. We're getting emails every day. We're trying to keep up with that. And also the State High School League is also changing everything. You just really need to be flexible, and both of our athletic or activity offices will try to keep you updated as much as we can. Right now, we have those 4 fall sports going, and hopefully they keep on going. Then the fall practices we're having are scheduled now. Those are subject to change as well. We don't know what winter sports are looking like yet. The State High School League hasn't come out to determine anything with boys swimming, wrestling, hockey, basketball. As of right now, we'd like to think they're going to be the same, but my guess would be they might be a reduced, schedule for the season. So just be flexible and patient, and we'll do our best to get all the info to you. And same thing, call our office anytime if you feel like we aren't getting the info to you as quick as we should.
Some different advice though would be our coaches are working really hard to protect your kids at practices, and after practice though we have no control over them. So my biggest advice is, what are they doing after practice? Are they staying safe? Are they avoiding big gatherings? Are they getting in a car with the 5 teammates and not wearing their masks? Because if they're doing that, then they're kind of defeating all the purposes that we're trying to do at practice, and the virus can spread. So my big advice is keep your kids safe when they're not at school and they're not at practice, and avoid large gatherings and follow all the protocols.
Thanks for adding that, Josh.
All right, and I'm going to add, this is non-athletic related, but parents, think about parties. This is mostly high school. Should your kid really be partying around? Who's going to parties? It's not unusual that kids from other states just crash parties. That's when the virus is getting spread. So if you can, please try to limit all situations where your kids are hanging out. Strangers, people from other states, people from towns that are a long distance away. That's how the COVID is especially getting spread. All right, let's go to the world of music. Orchestra. do we have any news about if there will be orchestra lessons? And will our kids have orchestra half of the year?
I can take that question. And so students typically in Virginia and Evelyn Gilbert at the 7th through 12th level typically combine the schools in order to have orchestra all year long. So we've always bused kids from one campus to another. During COVID, we cannot mix kids that way due to some COVID guidelines. So we did need to take our orchestra instructor and have her split her time. So half the year she's in Evelyn Gilbert providing orchestra, and the other half the year she's in Virginia providing orchestra. But in the semester in which they don't have the orchestra course, they will instead get their lessons. So they will get individual or small group lessons to make sure that they're staying up with their playing.
Lisa, here's a related one. You're probably the best person to answer this one also, but probably in the elementary music. I know that some COVID has been spread by people who are singing right next to each other. How is vocal choir going to work in our school system this year?
Great question. And so our choirs right now, instead of being held typically in the choir room, which is a large space in and of itself, we've moved them all to the auditorium. And so we have on the stage put out fake number 20 or so chairs, and they are about 12 feet from each other. So about 20 students will sing. They will all leave the room. The air will be circulated through our ventilation system, and then a different group of 20 will sing. So we won't be able to have the whole choir sing at one time, but they will in a 90-minute block all be able to sing in that day.
Elementary principals, what's happening with music in the elementary level? What are you doing?
I can speak for the Roosevelt. At the Roosevelt, our music specialist will be going to the individual classrooms, but they will not be singing. She's going to do a variety of different activities that are definitely music related. If we're still working out some details, if we can bring some singing back in, it would have to be in the same kind of scenario that Lisa's been describing, using some of those bigger spaces.
And at the Parkview, there's different situations where they will be in the music room and some in the classroom. We're working those out, but she will be utilizing more of the instrument type things and the rhythms. And she has a big enough space here at the Parkview in her music room to socially distance those kids. But she is also going to be varying what she's doing in class, so it's not as much of the singing and such. And she will be utilizing those time frames if she were to sing.
Okay, here's one on activities and clubs. What will activities and clubs like Student Council, National Honor Society, Knowledgeable, etc.? This question is specific to Virginia. If we can have them, what if a student is a distance learner? So what's happening, activities, club, Student Council, and what if you're a distance learner? How does that work with activities?
Great question, and this is a unified answer for all clubs and activities throughout all of Rock Ridge. So even though it was just Virginia High School, I can answer that for the district. Currently, in the district, we run well over 80 different clubs and activities for our students. And so that would cause many students to be involved in several different groups simultaneously and cause a lot of cross-contamination. So we have made a unified district decision to move all clubs and activities like that, like Student Council, National Honor Society, Knowledge Bowl, things like that. They are all virtual, so they will all be held via Zoom links as well. So distance learners as well as in-person learners would be able to add and join into those clubs throughout.
Josh or Jojo, do you have anything in addition to add on the activity front?
Lisa covered it.
Okay.
Nope.
Let's go. Here's one. What are you going to do if another kid refuses to wear a mask? putting the entire classroom at risk, what's going to happen? How are you going to keep my child safe? Let's start in the elementary on this one. Dan, let's start with you, just because you're the new guy.
Yep, that's
So we're just gonna
that's
pick on the
okay.
new guy a little.
So we would work with that student. We would have those conversations just like we do with any student, any discipline situation. We try to find the root of the cause, work with the family, and then if things did not improve, we would just follow our student handbook and disciplinary policy.
Sorry, Dr. Schmidt. Yes, I'm going to go off exactly what Dan says. In the elementary, we're going to, at the Parkview, we're going to work with that student and try to do some social stories and try to talk about or look for different options for them. Maybe it's a different mask, maybe it's more mask breaks and things. We're going to work with those kids and try to get them so that everybody is safe in our building. But as Dan said, if that's something that's going to cause an issue, we will follow our discipline policy. The one thing I will say though, that is if we're having an issue with a kid, it's not, you will hear from me as a parent and a guardian, because we need to work together because we are a team.
And here at the high school, exactly the same as what they said. Of course, if they have a medical exemption, so we'll need to work with some training for our students to help them understand that some kids may have a medical exemption from wearing a mask or a shield. And so sometimes it might look like refusal when really it's a medical need. So we'll do some training on that to make sure there's understanding around that. But of course, then if it's not that, it's just non-compliance, we need to find out why. And one thing that I can add to what the other two have shared is that all of our schools have figured out ways to get mask breaks built into the day, which looks like kids being brought outside for a variety of different things, whether it's recess or outdoor learning or lunch times or things like that, in order to give them time to enjoy some fresh air, mask free. So those will be built in too to try to minimize any of those instances where kids would not be able to comply.
Okay, Bill Bryson, here's got a couple for you. We don't have internet at our house. And how is my child going to do their assignments online if we don't have internet?
Yeah, so Bill Bryson here. I'm in a very similar situation as you. I'm commuting or coming in from home here, and I have a very low bandwidth situation, which is why my video is not on. But we will be providing hotspots for those families. We're starting off with the families that are choosing distance learning first, because we know that the 100% of their day is going to be web-based. And we sent out a survey a couple of days ago asking families to fill out a form if they are requesting a hotspot. We're going through that information right now. And what we're trying to look at is Mediacom, if you happen to live in the Mediacom service area, is offering up a subsidized internet plan for families that qualify for free and reduced lunch status. And so we're trying to look through to find folks that could qualify for that so we can get them set up with a very reliable, high-speed, dedicated connection at their home. And then once we've got those folks figured out, we'll be deploying hotspots out to everybody else. And we just got the hotspots in yesterday. We're starting to get those provisioned and set up for you so that it'll be basically a turn it on when you get it situation instead of having to have it configured yourself. And we'll get those out to you early next week at the latest. So I've got one with me this evening, and we're trying to get all those details figured out. But we're going to be contacting you based off of the form that you filled out a couple days ago.
Okay, Bill, this is another technology related question. I think you're probably the best one to answer this. Our family, we don't have computers. How is my child going to be able to go online without a computer? I'm hearing kids are getting iPads, and then who paid for all these iPads? All right, couple questions there.
Sure. We do have an iPad for every student, pre-K through 12. And those iPads are ready to hand out. We will have every kid with an iPad on the first day or two of school, depending on when they enrolled in our school district. Everybody that was enrolled as of 2 weeks ago, we have their iPads ready to go already. And the kids that are enrolling as we speak, those will be ready by the second day of school. And that's how they'll be able to do their learning both in school and at home. We've got our curriculum designed to be COVID friendly this year. We're going to try to reduce the amount of paper that we're passing back and forth between students and teachers. And a lot of the instructional materials are going to be distributed virtually to those iPads, and students will be able to turn in assignments on those iPads. And we expect that to go really well. That's kind of, it's not something new to our teachers. They've been using these platforms for a few years now. And the way we got the iPads was we have had an operating referendum that has helped pay for some of these devices over the last several years, and we also leveraged some COVID relief funds from the government that helped pay for them as well. It allowed us to start off all kids in our school district with a new device this fall, which is really helpful, especially in situations like this where we have to really lean on technology heavily as we move between distance and in-person learning.
Okay, and the questions are slowing down, so send me, if you have a question, send it in now. Send it to noel.schmidt@rrps.org. Bob Voss, we got a transportation question. What about kids who live in the Virginia district who go to Evelyn Gilbert? For example, coming from the Britt, Worry, Sandy Pike area. That's the area north of town, north of Virginia. Brown's Transportation is no longer picking them up. Has transportation been set up besides having to transfer 2 or 3 buses to get to school? So what are we doing with kids in the Virginia district who are choosing to go to Evelyn Gilbert schools?
We are taking them on a case-by-case basis. We're trying to arrange transfers where we can. It should be about the same as last year, but we aren't using Brown Transportation for some of those transportation needs.
Okay, next question. Has the handbook changed on the mask issue to enforce mask usage to move a student to distance learning if not compliant? So a kid who is not cooperating with the mask usage, have we done something wording wise in the handbook to say that that kid is going to go to distance learning if they're not compliant? This is probably a question for the principals.
I
Let's
can
start
answer
at high
that.
school this time. Lisa, take it away.
Yep, I can take that. So as far as my understanding in discussing the student handbooks with the school board, no, there is nothing in there that would ultimately move them automatically over to distance learning for a variety of reasons that might not work for particular families. But sometimes there are consequences, and that's usually a big fancy word we call insubordination, which is just basically failure to follow the rules that are in there, and there tends to be consequences with that. But it really depends on the situation, the students, and the current climate of what we're dealing with. So no, in short, they would not just go straight over to distance learning.
And I'll speak here, Mr. Grippentrog from Gilbert. We will, if there's medical excuses or students that may have a particular individual education plan, there may be chances for students that they may not have to wear their masks through the entire day, or we will make accommodations for them as we go through our days. So like Lisa said, we'll take things on an individual basis for sure.
All right, say Todd, since you have joined us, and just so people know, no, Todd was not skipping the meeting. He was at open house. I just saw him over there. They got an open house there too. So, but Todd, since you're with us, the question earlier came up on what time does the school do the school doors open? So what time do my kids go into the building? And then what time does the actual school day start on the Gilbert campus?
Okay, if you didn't get a chance to come to open house, I'll send this information out over the weekend. A lot of different COVID protocols and things for the Gilbert campus for parents and students. But the building opens the doors will open at 7:45 for students that need to come in to eat breakfast. Otherwise, students will be congregating outside the building until about 8 o'clock. Junior high classes start at 8:05. Nell Sheen classes will start at 8:10. Teachers will go, for the Nell Sheen, teachers will go outside to meet the students. And for the junior high, we'll have supervision outside as well and invite students in, and they'll report to their first hour class by 8:05.
Okay, thanks, Todd. I have just a couple more questions. So this is the final call for questions. So parents, if you have a question, please send it to me via email and we'll answer those. Question here is, what happens if my child forgets something and I have to run it to them at school? Am I still going to be able to get stuff to my child?
I'll take that one. We just had this discussion today. Yes, you will be able to get things to your children or your child at school. In some of the buildings, there's the buzzer system, and somebody may meet you at the door to grab that because we're trying to prevent visitors into the building simply because of COVID. And in other buildings, there will be a sign on the door to either make a phone call into the secretary's office to have somebody meet you, or you may be entering the building just to give it to the secretary. But we're trying to, unless you have an appointment, avoid the visitors into the building for the simple reason of COVID.
Okay, this might be our last question unless I get one more coming up. What if the teacher gets COVID? What happens to my student's class?
That might be very dependent on the situation. If a teacher is unable to teach, we may have substitute teachers. If the teacher is able to teach remotely, we may have supervision in the classrooms while students are in the classrooms, and the teacher would be able to Zoom in and communicate with students that way, and through Schoology as well.
Any principal want to add to what Todd said? All right, I do not have any more questions. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight. We still could have another one of these in about a week from now. We'll see how things go. So I want to thank everyone for joining us and have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.